September 7th, 2024, two storied programs meet for the first time during the regular season. The University of Michigan versus the University of Texas. This is your Roundtable.
We didn't come this far just to come this far.
We want to be legendary.
Guys, today we have a very packed show. I want you to think of the Roundtable as your catch-up for the week. If you're reading InsideTexas.com, some of this stuff is going to be familiar to you. If you're not a member, join now. We are running a special with the promo code HOOK'em. You'll get 50% off the annual price. That's $4.99 a month, which is the annual breakdown. Please check us out. Again, that promo code is HOOK'em, HOOKEM. All right, let's get into it. First, I want to start with Ian. Now, Ian, if somebody is at home, they're watching this game with their friends, what are some things that they can be looking for to impress their friends? They want to be couch analysts. What are some things that they should be focused on?
One of the most important things in this game is the Michigan run game. If you stop Michigan's run game, you win. You have to stop it for 4 quarters. And you have to stop it without getting gashed by gadget plays or throws or whatever else early in the game. So it's been a hang up for Ohio State. Sometimes Ohio State stops the Michigan run game early, gets murdered somewhere else, adjusts, and then eventually just gets pounded into the turf by the end of the game by the run game. Texas has to be able to do at least as good as Ohio State has done and probably better to win. The big cues for that are going to be, do the Texas defensive tackles hold the point of attack? If you just train your eyes just on the Texas defensive linemen, are they getting pushed backwards? Are they getting pushed sideways? Or are they generally maintaining their place? Or are they getting into the Michigan backfield? If you're seeing positive developments there, Texas is going to win the game. Okay, very simple. But even if they're getting pushed around a little bit, the next thing you'll watch, which will be much easier to see, is can Texas's linebackers and safeties fill creases that develop? Colorado State creased Texas a couple times in the run game last week. And then what happened? Immediately, Michael Taff or Derek Williams or Andrew Makuba or whoever was there making a tackle before any real damage was done. If you do that against Michigan, you're also probably in good shape. If you've got big, long runs, or they're just 5 yards every single time, that's not going to be good. On the other side of the ball, the offense, this is a very difficult defense to attack because they play 1 and 2 high zone match coverages with really good defensive backs. Their cornerback Will Johnson is going to be drafted probably in the first round next spring. And they shut down Washington last year. They've been defending Ohio State at a high level with all their NFL receivers for the last 3 years. Very difficult to attack. And they can blitz in a lot of different ways while still playing safe zone match coverages behind them. Some good cues. You don't want to see guys running free at Quinn on their disguised blitzes. That would be a very bad sign for this game, a very obvious one. A good test will be, how does Sark choose to attack this team? Does he try to do it with balance? Does he throw the ball quick and short here and there to try to probe them and set them up? Does he feel like Texas can actually block them well enough to attack down the field? The intentions of Sark are going to be big, and he's usually pretty aggressive in a game like this, if he can be. So when he's dialing up his big plays, if those are hitting, obviously it'll be very obvious and apparent that Texas is doing well. If they are not hitting, then if you see Quinn drop back behind big protection and then have to eat it or throw it short or something, then maybe Sark miscalculated and there's going to be some problems. And one final thought. Michigan is vulnerable in the secondary to some extent, but where they could really be had is when they're trying to move linebackers around in the blitz game and they're trying to bring a guy from here and drop a guy there. If you can attack them with a tight end or a extra slot receiver or a Jaden Blue, that's a really good way to undo Michigan's scheme in their blitz package. So I think Jaden Blue may be the biggest X factor for Texas in this game. And I'd watch for how Sark has drawn up ways to get him the ball, throwing him the football on screens, on quick passes and such. That might be the key to the attack.
Ian Boyd, ladies and gentlemen. And before we get to anything else, I want to hear a quick word from our sponsor. Hi, I want to tell you about Laura Baker. If you're looking for a new home in the 512 or even at this point, let's face it, 737 area code, there's only one number to call. That's Laura Baker at 512-784-0505. As a member of the elite Andy Allen team with Keller Williams, Laura has helped Longhorns find the home of their dreams in Central Texas. Just ask our resident sex symbol, Ian Boyd, who moved all the way from Michigan to Texas with Laura's help. Laura can help you find what you're looking for in the 512, the 737, or even parts of the 254 and the 210. Just, give her a call at 512-784-0505. Her email is in the description as well as the rest of her contact details. She's a friend. Give her a call. This week on InsideTexas.com, Eric wrote about 5 players that need to have an impact this week in order for Texas to be successful over Michigan. So, Eric, well, first off, who are those 5 players?
I don't just like to do lists. I like to make a list, but also offer the reasons that will provide a lot more game context or how I see the flow of the game going on. It gives you an idea of what I think Michigan's pressure points are and where maybe Texas is susceptible to Michigan's strengths. And so the 5 I went with were Quinn Ewers, quarterback, of course, Anthony Hill, linebacker, Alfred Collins, defensive tackle, Matthew Golden, wide receiver, and kind of a mystery question mark, whoever the hell is covering Colston Loveland, Michigan's very talented tight end. Obviously, with Quinn Ewers, there's a path to victory here in which he controls the game from the pocket. That's assuming that the offensive line does enough to keep their very talented defensive line at bay. That's a Michigan team strength. We've seen Texas come up with really good protections, really unique ways to get the ball out of Quinn's hands quickly. I think they're going to have a good game plan for it. I'm a little bit concerned about the D-line, of course, but I think there's a path for Quinn to have a stat line similar to what he had in the opener, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Texas is going to win if he has that stat line. Anthony Hill, Michigan extends their run gaps from horizon to horizon. You got to protect the width of the entire field in the run game. There's going to be somebody's going to leak through at some point. Anthony Hill or one of the other linebackers needs to be there to stop him. But also Hill's going to have to be, he's going to have to be ready for this mentally because they motion a lot, they shift a lot, they'll have unbalanced sets, they'll do a lot of multiple tight ends. So this is a big game for him. He missed a couple of run fits against Colorado State. He's going to have to be on his note. I predict he plays very well. Alfred Collins, defensive end in this game a lot. Base defense is going to see him not at D tackle, but at 5 tech. He's going to be able to factor playing inside and down and playing outside and blowing up the timing on these outside runs. Big game for him to get a push. That offensive line, that Michigan offensive line is green. They're susceptible to a really talented player like Alfred Collins. I think Alfred Collins he has a chance to be the best defensive tackle on the field on Saturday. Of course, you have to account for the quality of offensive line. Texas offensive line is better than Michigan's. Matthew Golden, they need a pressure relief valve. Isaiah Bond is probably going to get plenty of attention for Will Johnson, the first-round draft pick cornerback on Michigan. I think Bond is as talented, or Golden is as talented as Bond. Maybe not quite the vertical threat, but perhaps a better all-around wide receiver. Somebody that you can hit in the short intermediate game. He can break a tackle and make a big one. He's got a knack for the end zone, hit twice in the first one. And then finally, the wild card is Colston Loveland. They're going to have to defend him with a very good, sound team approach. I don't think it's going to be one individual that can match up with him. At times, they're going to get big with him. You might see Maurice Blackwell. I mentioned Maurice Blackwell in the article. He can be more of a coverage Sam linebacker rather than Trey Moore. Trey Moore on 3rd and long, that's a good idea. 2nd and 8, you might want Maurice Blackwell out there on Loveland. Jahdae Barron will get some looks. Safeties will bracket. Jalen Gilbo will get some looks on him too. So it's going to have to be team-wide defense. If they bottle up Loveland, Quinn Ewers has a sound game from the pocket, Texas is going to win.
One of the things I think that is really valuable about this 12-team playoff is it changes the mood of games like this. In the past, you had to win them all. I mean, maybe you got lucky and you could be a team with one loss and still make it to the playoff, make it to the BCS, make it to whatever the championship was for that particular year. But now with this playoff system, we can have out of conference games like this. And at least from a fan perspective, it's less serious. Not that I don't take it seriously. It's obviously a very serious game, or we wouldn't even be doing shows like this, but the pressure is off a little bit. The boys can go out and play. They can have a game and not feel like the world is weighing down on them. And that's really what I'm looking forward to seeing this weekend. And Paul and I talked earlier this week. He was talking about what this game could teach us. So, what are some of the elements that we could look for in this game that might give us an indication about what the rest of the season might look like?
All right. I'm joining you by the glow of warm candlelight and fire pits. Not actually inside, but it's actually I have an office light out. Hopefully, this will be all right. It'll be a nice, intimate conversation with you. And what I want to talk about are some of the things that we can use this game for as a springboard or as a diagnostic for the rest of the season. So I'll explain. Uh, we know that Michigan has an elite defense, and we know it's a blitz heavy defense. How does Quinn Ewers perform against that blitz? We know last year that was where he performed probably at the most mundane level. He averaged 7.1 yards per attempt, as opposed to his accustomed 8.8 yards per attempt on all throws. When he's not blitzed last year, he averaged over 9 yards per attempt, which is elite territory. So that's going to be an important diagnostic for the University of Texas. Why? Because there's another blitz happy defense that's actually pretty high quality on this schedule, the Oklahoma Sooners. So if Texas can hold up to the Michigan blitz, it's a good bet they can hold up to the OU blitz. If they can't hold up to the Michigan blitz, we're going to have to get better in that regard, or Dallas may be a little bit too interesting for us. Here's another part that could be interesting. How does the Texas O-line handle an elite defensive line? We know Michigan has an extraordinary defensive line. By my reckoning, they've got 4 NFL players on there. The 2 guys inside are going to be first round or second round draft picks. However, there are some other elite defensive lines on this schedule. I'm talking about the Georgia Bulldogs. I'm talking about the Texas A&M Aggies. No matter how they perform for the rest of the year, A&M's got some guys up front, and NFL draft scouts will tell you it's the same. So if Texas can handle Michigan and their big boys in an enemy stadium, it's a good bet that Texas can handle a lot of the defensive lines that are going to be thrown at them for the rest of the season, including those Georgia Bulldogs in Austin. And then finally, the Texas wide receivers, and even more broadly, the Texas pass catchers. Are they good, or are these guys a problem? Because the answer to that question is going to dictate the upside of this offense. We know Sark can scheme it up. We know Ewers can sling it. We know that these receivers are pretty good, but are they potentially a real problem for people? Are Matthew Golden, are Isaiah Bond, are Silas Bolden, are Jonte Cook, Ryan Wingo, Amari Nyblack, Gunnar Helm, Juan Davis, Jaden Blue, all of the pass catchers, are these guys a real problem every single time they catch the ball, or are they just pretty good? If they're pretty good, I think we know how Texas's season is going to go. If they're elite, if they are terrifying to opposing defenses, the upside for this Texas Longhorn team is national title win.
It may come as no shock to anyone else in the world that the University of Texas is not the only school that is recruiting. And this is a massive weekend for the University of Michigan and their recruiting class. And I'm just curious, Justin, I understand that this may not be the biggest week in terms of recruiting for the University of Texas, but there's bound to be some overlap there. Are there any kids that are looking at both Michigan and Texas that fans need to keep their eye on?
Absolutely. There's a handful that both are going to be battling for nationwide type recruits. Let's start in 2025 with IMG Academy's Nathaniel Boateng. He is a 6 foot, probably 6'1", about 200-pound linebacker, edge type guy, probably more of an outside linebacker. He's actually visiting Michigan this weekend, taking an official visit. He will be taking his official visit to Texas on October 19th for the Georgia game. That's that looks like that's building up to be the big recruiting weekend this season for the Horns. And so Boateng is a guy that you got to pay attention to, and know that if Michigan is going after a certain linebacker, that's probably a good sign that Texas is going after that same guy. I don't know where Texas really stands in that recruitment because he's kind of been all over the board a little bit, but I do know that they will be getting him on campus in October. And so, like with Sark playing the long game, you just got to keep taking swings. The other one is really the important one. That's the 2026 number one running back in the country. His name is Javian Osborne. He's out of Forney, Texas. And I went to go see him a couple weeks ago, and Texas is in a great spot there. They've laid the foundation early. Tashard Choice is doing a really tremendous job. But Michigan was the team that he kept talking about. Tony Alford and Sharon Moore and the tradition and the, all the good stuff that Michigan offers. It's hard not to kind of love on the national champs, and they're pushing. He's already been up there once this summer. He's coming back on Saturday to check out that game, and I think that's great for both teams, because either way, I think that this might be a Texas-Michigan recruiting battle, and there's not a lot of head-to-heads. LC, you just don't see a lot of those with Texas and Michigan usually, but with Javian Osborne early in the stages, I think those are going to be the two teams to beat, and so those two recruits in particular are the ones that I would pay the most attention to.
We're about to get to the picks, but before we do, there are other games going on, and we've invited our friend Emma from Sassy Stuff to tell us about two games that are pretty impactful this weekend.
Hey, Inside Texas, I'm Emma from Sassy Stuff. I know we're all excited about that noon matchup between Texas and Michigan, but here are a few other games you should keep your eye on in week 2. First up, I have that 3:30 game between Kentucky and South Carolina. This is the first SEC matchup of the year. Kentucky is coming off that dominant 31-0 win over Southern Mississippi, with QB Brock Vandegrift throwing 3 touchdowns. Their defense was rock solid, holding USM to just 131 yards. And South Carolina, on the other hand, had a shaky start, barely edging out Old Dominion 23-19. Their QB, Lenora Sellers, struggled, and they'll need their defense to step up big time against Kentucky's strong offensive line, especially to give their QB time to settle into the game. Kentucky is favored by 8.5 points, but if South Carolina's defense can hold, this could be a serious matchup. The next game I want you to watch is Tennessee versus NC State, which is at 7:30. Tennessee's offense exploded for 718 yards in week 1, and this game will be a better test for their QB, Nico Iamaleava. Tennessee is currently ranked 14th in the AP poll, while NC State sits at 24, so expect a tough matchup here. So that's what I'm watching this week in week 2. Back to you guys.
So that Kentucky South Carolina game, have that on in the background while you're watching our live post-game show. We're going to have Connor, we're going to have myself, we're going to have everybody that's available breaking down what we just saw. It's going to be a good time. Just bring your drinks, throw your questions in the chat. It'll be fun for everybody. All right, boys, this is what we waited for. What are our picks for this particular game? Now, we've heard from all of you reasons why this could or could not be successful for Texas. So, Eric, we'll start with you. What are some things that we should look for, and what is your final prediction for this game?
Texas has the advantages in a number of ways going into this game. Obviously, they won't have the home crowd, but they didn't have it going into Alabama last year. I think that game gives them plenty of confidence going into this one. There's so much more continuity. There's been no turnover with the coaches. The roster turnover that Texas had, they were able to address. Michigan was not able to address the roster turnover to the degree that Texas has. Got experience on the offensive line, experience at quarterback. I think better skill talent is clear advantage for Texas. Team defense might even be better for Texas as well. Michigan has a D-line advantage and maybe a cornerback and some good linebackers. Other than that, everything points to Texas. I have Texas winning 27-10. I think it's going to start off a little slow. You might see 0-0 exiting the first quarter as they sort of paw at each other and feel each other out. But in the end, Texas has too much. They'll pull away in the second half.
I think Texas fans have been getting a little bit overconfident in this game. Michigan is a very tough team. They're very well designed to play games like this and to play them closer than you would think. But they have lost talent from their national championship team. They do have mega questions at quarterback. So I think Texas can hold them off 27-13.
All right, score predictions, the thing that everyone dreads when you commit something to video that lives forever. It's going to be dug up and it's going to be used against you at some point. You know that. But nonetheless, we got to press forward and we got to make our predictions. Look, Texas-Michigan is going to be a phenomenal game. It's a matchup of iconic brands. These are really interesting, contrasting teams in style of play and approach to program building. And I think it's a big proving ground for both teams. It's going to be an important game as well. So, with that said, everyone's predicting a tremendous defensive ball game and, first team to 17 wins, that kind of stuff. I think Michigan's probably held back a little bit on offense. They're not quite as bad as what they showed against Fresno State. And we know that Texas held back on offense against Colorado State. So I'm not predicting a shootout per se, but I think Texas is going to move the ball a little bit. Ultimately, are they going to be able to get into pay dirt, though? And that's where I think the game gets interesting. I'm picking a field goal heavy game prompted by Michigan's excellent kicker, the transfer from Arkansas State, and of course our own Bert Auburn. Bert plus, never underestimate the confidence of a white man with an afro. I'm picking the Texas Longhorns to win in Ann Arbor, opening it up a little bit late, but still getting a convincing win, 26-16. Hook 'em.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. I don't think you're going to see the team that Michigan put on the field against Fresno State. This is going to be a better team. They're going to be more sharp. They're definitely going to be more focused in on this one. This is going to be big. I think it's low-scoring. I think Michigan's going to take the air out of the ball. I think they're going to run the clock down on every play. I think they're going to try to be judicious in what they can get. But I don't think they match up well with Texas on the outside. The meat and potatoes, those are good matchups. The best matchup of all is the Texas offensive line and the Michigan defensive line. That's where it's like big time. That's the big matchup. But on the outside, I think Texas speed is just a little too much for Michigan. I think it's low scoring, but I do think the Horns come out of Ann Arbor with a win, 23-16. It's right there on that 7-point line. I don't. It went to 7.5. Yesterday, and so I'm not real sure what it's going to look like this morning, but yeah, that's where I've got it.
There you have it. We want you to join us before the game right here at Inside Texas Football on YouTube. Go ahead and like and subscribe. We're trying to get to 10,000. If we can get to 10,000, Ian says that he'll allow us to go to 11,000, and that's something we're really excited about. Now, before you leave, we have a special treat for you. I had the opportunity to interview a longtime vet of the SEC referee game, and he had some amazing stories to tell. And we want to give you a little preview of that interview right now. Fans, when they think of referees, they generally have one question. And if you don't mind, if you could just give us your home address, phone number, I think that would be great. If we could just let the internet know that.
Yeah, it's funny that you asked that because when the game I was telling you about, after that game, I had my telephone monitored by the FBI for 30 days.
Oh, my gosh.
Because of the death threats that were coming in.
Oh, man.
After that time. So
this is that LSU game you're talking about?
Yeah. They can find me when they want to.
Oh, geez.
They have a way of finding me for sure.
That's it. There you have it. We are going to get that interview to you as quick as possible, but in the interim, join us at the community at InsideTexas.com. We are running a 50% off special right now. Just use the promo code HOOK'em. We're going to be here before the game live and post-game live. So please come and join the community. Like, subscribe, hit that bell so you know when we're going on. And just remember that the left lane is for passing only. You know who you are.